Our first story is about a group of college friends who dared to venture into the abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. This decrepit building, shrouded in rumours and fear, had long been a place of dark fascination. On a foggy evening, Lisa, Mark, Jessica and Tom decided to explore its haunted halls. Armed with flashlights and a video camera, they stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of mould and decay. As they ventured deeper into the asylum, their laughter and bravado faded into uneasy silence. The oppressive darkness seemed to swallow their flashlight beams, and every creak of the floorboards echoed ominously. They reached a large hall, the remnants of old medical equipment scattered around. Suddenly, a faint whispering began, seeming to emanate from the very walls around them. "Did you hear that?" Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. The others nodded, their faces pale. The whispers grew louder, forming words they couldn't quite understand, but the tone was unmistakably malevolent. As they moved further into the heart of the asylum, they found a dusty, old patient record book. Mark opened it, and the whispers grew deafening. The book detailed the lives and deaths of the patients, many of whom had suffered gruesome fates. One name stood out: Emily Saunders, a young woman who had been wrongly committed and died under mysterious circumstances. The room grew colder, and the whispers stopped, replaced by a blood-curdling scream. The friends turned to see a ghostly figure of a woman, her eyes hollow and her mouth twisted in agony. "Leave this place!" she shrieked. Panic set in, and they ran for the exit, but the hallways seemed to twist and change, leading them deeper into the asylum. One by one they were separated. Mark found himself in a room filled with rusty medical equipment, and as he tried to escape, the door slammed shut. The last thing he heard was Emily's voice, whispering his name. Jessica and Tom's fates were similar. Trapped in the asylum's labyrinth, they fell prey to the vengeful spirits that haunted the place. Lisa was the last to see daylight. She stumbled out, her mind shattered by what she had witnessed. The asylum loomed behind her, its whispers still echoing in her ears. She never spoke of that night again, and the asylum remained a place of fear and mystery, its secrets forever buried within its crumbling walls. Our second story is about a man named Robert, a historian obsessed with uncovering the truth about the old asylum. He had heard the tales of ghosts and hauntings, but dismissed them as mere folklore. Determined to uncover the real history, he decided to spend the night in the asylum, armed with his research and recording equipment. As night fell, Robert set up his camera and began exploring the asylum. The walls were covered in graffiti, and the floor was littered with debris. He started recording his findings, documenting the asylum's dark past. Hours passed, and despite the eerie atmosphere, he found nothing out of the ordinary. Just as he was about to leave, he stumbled upon a hidden door behind a rotting bookshelf. Inside was an old office, untouched by time. The nameplate on the desk read Dr. Henry Whitaker. Robert's heart raced as he realized he had found the office of the asylum's infamous head doctor, known for his cruel experiments on patients. He began to sift through the doctor's papers, uncovering horrifying details of the experiments. Suddenly the room grew cold and the door slammed shut. Robert's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. He heard the sound of footsteps and turned to see the ghostly figure of Dr. Whitaker standing before him, a sinister smile on his face. "You shouldn't be here," the doctor hissed, his voice echoing with malice. Robert tried to run, but the doctor's ghost was relentless. The walls of the office seemed to close in on him, and the temperature dropped further. He felt icy hands gripping his shoulders, and the last thing he saw was the doctor's face, twisted in a vengeful grin. Robert's body was found the next morning, his expression frozen in terror. The footage from his camera revealed the ghostly figure of Dr. Whitaker. But the truth of what happened to Robert remained a mystery. The asylum claimed another victim, and its dark secrets remained buried within its haunted halls. Our third story is about a young couple, Sarah and James, who moved into a house near the abandoned asylum. They had heard the rumors, but dismissed them as mere superstition. One night, their curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to explore the asylum. As they wandered through the dark, crumbling corridors, they heard the faint sound of children's laughter. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked, clutching James's arm. He nodded, his face pale. They followed the sound, which led them to a long-forgotten children's ward. The room was filled with old, dusty toys and tiny, decaying beds. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the walls. Suddenly, the room was filled with ghostly apparitions of children, their faces twisted in sorrow and pain. They reached out to Sarah and James, their eyes pleading for help. "We have to leave," James said, his voice shaking. But as they turned to go, the door slammed shut. The children's laughter turned to cries of anguish, and the temperature dropped. The ghostly children began to close in on them, their hands icy cold. Sarah and James tried to escape, but the children's spirits were relentless. They were pulled into the darkness, their screams echoing through the asylum. The next morning, their bodies were found in the children's ward, their faces frozen in terror. The asylum claimed 2 more victims, and the children's laughter still echoed through its haunted halls, a chilling reminder of the pain and suffering that once took place within its walls. Our fourth story is about a paranormal investigator named Daniel, who had spent years researching haunted places. The abandoned asylum was his latest challenge. Confident in his abilities, he entered the asylum with his equipment, ready to document any supernatural activity. As he explored the building, he felt an oppressive presence watching him. Undeterred, he made his way to the basement, where the most sinister rumors were centered. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. In the basement, Daniel found a series of cells where the most disturbed patients were kept. As he set up his camera, he noticed a dark, shadowy figure lurking in the corner of one of the cells. "Who's there?" he called out, but there was no response. Suddenly, the shadow moved, darting towards him. Daniel felt a cold, suffocating grip around his throat. He struggled to breathe, his vision blurring as the shadowy figure loomed over him. "Leave this place," it whispered, its voice a chilling hiss. Daniel fought to free himself, but the shadow's grip tightened. The last thing he saw was the dark figure's eyes, glowing with malevolence. His camera recorded his final moments, capturing the shadow's attack. The footage was found days later, but Daniel's body was never recovered. The asylum remained as it was, a place of darkness and terror, where shadows moved on their own, and the spirits of the past continued to haunt its halls. Our final story is about an urban explorer named Emily, who had heard of the asylum's dark history and wanted to see it for herself. She entered the building on a dare, determined to prove she was braver than her friends. As she walked through the decaying corridors, she found an old nurse's station. The walls were lined with medical charts and crumbling files. Suddenly, she heard a faint humming, like a lullaby. Following the sound, she discovered a ghostly figure of a nurse, her face twisted in a permanent expression of sorrow. "Who are you?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. The nurse turned to her, her eyes filled with pain. "I am trapped here, cursed to roam these halls for eternity," she replied. Emily felt a cold chill run down her spine as the nurse approached her. "Help me!" the nurse pleaded, reaching out with icy hands. Emily tried to back away, but the nurse's grip was strong. The air grew colder and the walls seemed to close in. Emily felt her strength fading, the nurse's curse draining her life force. The last thing Emily saw was the nurse's sorrowful face, whispering, "You should never have come here." Emily's body was found the next day, her face frozen in a look of terror. The asylum claimed yet another victim, its dark curse continuing to trap the soul. And so, dear listeners, the stories of the abandoned asylum continue to haunt the town. Its walls hold the secrets of countless lost souls, and its halls are filled with the echoes of pain and suffering. As you lay down to sleep tonight, remember these tales and think twice before venturing into places where the past refuses to rest.